but with so much to do and just not enough weaponry. 13-4 to finalize it.
Hey Sin City, big changes, huh? I'm your new head coach Kaplan. Let's get into what that means.
After a lackluster performance in the first half of the regular season, Sentinels decided to fire their head coach Syyko right after their loss against LEVIATAN. Since we don't really have any insight into internal team dynamics, the only thing we can reasonably look at are the timeouts that Syyko took and how they affected the games. In official VCT matches, coaches are only allowed to communicate with their players before the match begins, at halftime, and during the 2 tactical timeouts allowed per map. This means it's incredibly important that those timeouts are used well. In this video, we'll take a look at what a good timeout looks like, and then analyze the timeouts that Syyko took in their match against LEVIATAN to see whether or not they were actually helpful. Timeouts can obviously be used for a lot of different reasons, but a good timeout should at least attempt to make a significant change to the way a team is playing. When I think about world-class coaching and timeout usage, I think about NRG's coach Chet and Fnatic's coach Mini. Let's take a look at some examples of their timeouts and how they significantly changed the way their teams played. In this game between NRG and Loud on Pearl, NRG had decent success taking B from B main and A from A main, but lost close rounds to successful retakes from Loud. In all 3 close rounds, Loud had full control of mid, which resulted in strong retake positioning, which can be traced back as the main reason for winning each retake. Loud at this point felt completely unthreatened by mid, so NRG called a timeout, and out of the timeout we immediately see mid control prioritized by NRG. They split A through Art, maintain Art control for post plant, and fend off the retake from Loud. This timeout caused a significant change in their game plan and caused Loud to be more wary of mid in subsequent rounds as a result of the playout of the timeout. Down 1-4 before the timeout, NRG ended up winning the half 7-5 after the timeout. Let's take a look at this other game between Fnatic and Na'Vi. Fnatic had issues on offense where all 5 members would get stuck in the same place together. They also had a failed 4-1 split attempt where the split off member was punished by themselves. Now down 5-1, Fnatic took a timeout, and out of the timeout, they started to implement a 3-2 split so they could continue to take more map control but also avoid having a lurker be killed alone. Suigetsu gets a crazy 1v2 here, but this still gives Fnatic enough map pressure to rotate B, close the round, and get momentum back into this game. Fnatic end up tying the half at 6-6 after this timeout, when they were initially down 5-1. Now we know what a good timeout looks like. Let's take a look at what problems Sentinels faced against LEVIATAN, and see if the timeouts actually helped resolve any of these problems. On their first map Split, 2 timeouts were taken, when Sentinels were up 4-2 in the first half and down 7-9 in the second half. Let's go over the main adjustments and issues from both halves to really see how these timeouts affected their strategy. Sentinels start an attack and have a great default strategy which involves establishing mid control. This allows them to threaten the B heaven push, but also walk out to A main or B main to execute when Lev members lack information. This works well as they win the first 4 rounds of the game doing this. On round 5, LEVIATAN realized they are lacking too much information by giving up mid and commit to contesting and maintaining information mid. LEVIATAN win their first round of the game when Viper late pushes mid and Jet late pushes into B main for information. They immediately know that Sentinels are walking A and are stacked and prepared when Sentinels execute. The main issue here is that Sentinels never kept anyone mid to check if LEVIATAN have cleared the area. They try to fix the issue immediately in the next round, when Sentinels take mid control but leave Sassy lurking, which ensures that LEVIATAN do not have a good idea where Sentinels are moving. We can see 3 LEVIATAN players stay A when all Sentinels players are leaning B. Sentinels are simply not explosive enough on their execute and just lose to 2 players anchoring the B side. A timeout is called after this round, and the main difference is that we see some more explicit A ramp control at the start of the round. From Sen's perspective, it probably seemed like LEVIATAN were not buying the A main pressure and maybe felt stacked B side, But we know from the spectator perspective that this isn't true because 3 LEVIATAN members stayed on A. The timeout didn't result in any major breakthroughs, but they had this Astra ult play through B Heaven and won the round. The real issue was the late round mid and B main control from LEVIATAN, as Sen's game plan was working great otherwise. I wouldn't say the timeout was good, as it didn't help identify the main issue, which continued to punish Sentinels in big rounds for the remainder of the half. We can see King walk down mid alone and kill Sassy in round 8, resulting in enough information for a B stack. Then Taco pushed up mid alone in round 9, allowing a heavy A stack from Lev, when a lot of utility is thrown near A by Sentinels. Then the op kill into B main in round 10, which forced Sen's hand again because they completely lost control of B main. I'd suggest more double lurk setups to punish the solo pushers from LEVIATAN when desperate for information. I'd still give this timeout a pass since they did try something new out of it with the ramp control, but the real issue was definitely not identified or addressed properly. Going into Defender's half up 7-5 on split, Sentinels stack and push mid. When LEVIATAN hears this, they immediately speed up A to take the site. The situation puts Sentinels in a full retake setup because they could not rotate from mid fast enough. A 2v4 crossfire from LEVIATAN completely destroys Sentinels in the retake, as their lack of screens control really punishes them and they lose pistol. I think people often forget that attackers ultimately have to go to the site, and it's always most reliable to try and set up a fight on site. Mid is valuable for information, but making a gamble push early into the round forfeits too much control on the extremities of the map. On Sen's Eco, Lev play it slow and punish desperate pushes from Sentinels to close out the round. Now on Sen's first gun round, they set up to collect some info mid but actually fight the sites this time. When LEVIATAN try and come out B main, Sentinels are ready for it and punish them on the execute. Tens gets caught trying to recollect info mid, but it's fine because it's still a 3v2. There's now a lot of open space on the map, but it's late into the round. Sentinels seem to forget that LEVIATAN ultimately needs to plant the bomb. They just need to play on sites now, as there's too much for LEVIATAN to clear with time running low. Playing sites late into the round always ensures you can't get flanked, and you will always get a decent chance at a fight. Instead, Sentinels are completely split across the map, and Sassy almost dies just checking the A main cross by himself. LEVIATAN gets the bomb down with 13 seconds left in the round, and Sentinels have to play another retake, but lack so much control of the map at this point, they basically have no advantage. This leads to their loss against Lev's bonus round. On their eco, they're extremely committed to finally fighting the sites so much that they completely neglect mid. And this actually works out amazingly, as Zekin makes a good play and almost carries them out of their eco. Sen and Lev both take timeouts here, so there's a lot of time to discuss the issues in the game. Out of the timeout, we see Tens play mid passively to try and gather some info while 3 Sen members hover A. But for some reason, absolutely nobody is playing on the site, and despite having 3 players near A, it's another full retake for Sentinels, who have to now retake into King's Viper ult. The only time Sentinels seemed like they had any grasp of the game were when they actually fought on the site. Every single retake attempt, regardless of if they were up players, failed miserably. This timeout definitely seemed useless and did not change anything in their game plan as they continued to retake A and lose because of it. This is not only a bad strategy, but it doesn't inspire any confidence in Sentinels players, as they don't really get to take any real gunfights and have to just push into a Viper ult, praying for a miracle. After this round, Sentinels finally try to really contest A main and set up for fights on both sites. This allows them to crawl back into the game all the way until they again played full retake on A against another Viper's pit, getting LEVIATAN to match point. This game goes into overtime, and we see LEVIATAN on defense walk down mid again to give enough information to stack A. Sentinels swap to defense and seem like they're set up for an A fight, but still have Pankata stuck behind screens while Def is playing elbow. This setup was kind of scuffed as no one was really on site to reasonably help Zekin, but at the very least there was at least some attempt to take the fight. We can see that both major issues were never fully solved in this map, despite Sentinels losing by only 2 rounds. Both major issues from attack and defense came up again in both overtime rounds, which they lost.
I think this is definitely a map where good coaching could have made the difference and turned the tide.
Let's also take a look at the second map on Ascent and how the timeouts could have affected the outcome of the rounds. 2 timeouts were called in this map when Sentinels were up 10-8 and down 10-11. That means there were no timeouts called in the first half, so let's take a look at where a timeout could have helped them in the first half. Sentinels start the map on defense and are heavily stacked A with 2 B players off site. LEVIATAN work mid control and are allowed to get up Cat and Tree. They attempt to hit A through Tree by pushing it to Heaven, but Sentinels are ready for it and win the round. After losing the eco, LEVIATAN attempts to work mid again and are completely uncontested. They are afforded a lot of mid and Cat control, which continues to pull Sentinels toward A again. LEVIATAN walks back to B main to hit B, which works great as Sentinels have leaned toward A due to the lack of mid and Cat control. Sentinels still win the retake, although not too comfortably, as time was definitely running a bit low. We can start to see the lack of mid and Cat control as a key weakness in Sentinels' setup. In round 6, we see LEVIATAN work another A split from Cat. Despite 3 players on the site, it's very hard to fight on A when Sentinels need to be worried about players flooding through door and A main at the same time. Don't forget the potential of the Heaven push as well, which LEVIATAN showed on Pistol. Despite being up 5-0, we can see the lack of control in Cat finally punish Sentinels and LEVIATAN win their first round. Immediately in the next round, we see a big play to crunch into B-Link from mid and B main. This was an amazing call as this not only contests the mid control LEVIATAN have been using to take Cat, but also discourages the potential of the KJ ult play from B main. The play was honestly a great counter strategy, but was executed very poorly. The 2 B main pushers completely forgot about the potential of an aggressive fight and get caught immediately by the Omen blind. TenZ has the perfect positioning to kill multiple members, but whiffs on the blind KO who eventually kills him. LEVIATAN barely squeeze out the round after Zekin makes a good attempt at a 1v3. I think the best timeout this half would have been right after this round, as Sentinels should be reminded that these types of plays to set up TenZ to directly contest important control are good for them. The timeout can help them recognize it was mainly an execution error that caused it to fail. After all, Sentinels have 2 initiators and Omen to set up Jet for fights across the map. In the next round, we again see a huge hole in Cat. TenZ is stacked on the side with Killjoy, and the Omen and KO are fighting for A main without their duelist. I at least like the attempt to take control of A main in response to completely giving up Cat, but the limp setup completely bites them again when Sassy gets pinched while backing out. And we continue to see TenZ play the same side as Killjoy away from his initiators and find no impact in any of the remaining rounds in the half. I know you guys are going to say that TenZ has an op, so you can't push aggressively, but this is exactly how 2022 Optic set up Ye in so many round-winning spots. Aggressive op positioning gets a lot of free kills and information, and you can act as the opposite site anchor from your Killjoy. It's redundant to have TenZ play the same side as Killjoy, and even worse when he isn't in a position to take advantage of the initiator utility. A timeout before any of these rounds to call out the setup issues could have prevented LEVIATAN from getting back 5 rounds when they started out the half down 0-5. In the next half, we see Sentinels display their own strong A executes, with LEVIATAN struggling to fend off the split from Cat. LEVIATAN sometimes exhibits similar problems where their Jet is disjointed from their main initiators during A executes. On round 19, LEVIATAN's Jet starts out the round grouped with his initiators on A, and they take the fight together while Sentinels try to scale up the site, winning the round. Up 10-8, Sentinels called their first timeout of the game. And out of the timeout, they call this complex strategy to take market control, go back to Cat, then fake A with Omen and A main who can still ult to B. The strat works well as it's a 4v2 on site, but Sentinels mess up their spacing and don't find good trades. I think this timeout was actually used pretty well, as they attempted to make use of the deep mid control by simultaneously threatening the market or cat push. I don't think the Omen fake was accounted for in the timeout, since you can see Sassy give up a main control, then come back later in the round, but regardless, the advanced mid control set up many options for Sentinels. Their final timeout is taken down 10-11. They simplify their strategy by going A after dodging the dagger. They win this round to tie up the game again, but I think it was more related to LEVIATAN messing up their setup and opting to play retake on A with no ults or plan for it. I like the idea to simplify Sentinel's strategy for just one round, but they failed to realize for the rest of the game that the mid control they had was really affording them a lot of options. Without any cat presence, LEVIATAN focus onto site this round and have numbers to close out the round. The improvised play to take the bomb and TP out saves Sentinels, and the Brazilian duo pulls out the 2v3. Now up 12-11, Sentinels just try a full B execute where Tens dies instantly, and we see Taco whiff on full flashed Sassy. This round should have been completely doomed for Sentinels, but Zekin pulls out the 1v2 to close out the map. Obviously, it's also up to the players to hit their shots and realize these issues themselves, but coaches have no other role in matches but to provide this type of insight, so they definitely need to be good at it. Here's an example of a good timeout from Sentinel's recent match against Loud, after Kaplan took over as head coach. This Lurk Viper Orb thrown by Sadhak continued to give Loud control of C long, and always kept Sentinels scared of a C execute. You can see it thrown every single round and continually deny important information from Sentinels every round. Down 4-4, Sentinels call a timeout, and out of the timeout, they implement this play for Marv to push up C while Zekin is also pressuring the long angle with an AWP. Despite losing the round, the play forced Sadhak to use different setups in future rounds. Although all the blame certainly can't be put on Syyko for Sentinels' failures, Sentinels definitely needed some changes if they want to make a championship run. Last week's games with the Iceman gave Sen fans some hope, so let's see if they're able to continue trending upwards after these changes. Leave a comment for what you think the problem is for Sentinels, and as always, thanks for watching.